as important, right? Maybe the issue is that our laws are outdated. We have weak institutions. You can see all these smaller bones in the fishbone diagram. You know, lack of synergy. Some government agencies say lack of funding. We don't have money to do it. Lack of capacity, federal character, the fact that square pegs are put in round holes. Whatever it is that is the smaller problem inside the bigger problem, you deconstruct it into this fishbone diagram, and then you choose one or two or three entry points. So if it's lack of awareness, you say, okay, you know what? We're going to begin capacity building and sensitization. We're going to find a way to, so you tackle the smaller problems as opposed to trying to tackle the big problem head on. So that's what PDIA is all about. Next slide, please. And so, for instance, this picture here is the situation we have on ground now, fuel scarcity. In fact, today, I saw a brand new Rolls Royce. I don't even know the name of the car, but it was parked by the side of the road, and they were buying fuel from those black market people in small jerry cans. And I just thought the irony of Nigeria, like, how do you see this big Rolls Royce stopping on the side of the road to buy black market? And the issue of fuel subsidy. This is a policy that we've not been able to really implement in Nigeria, implement properly. And it's caused so much hardship, we're in a country now where NNPC is making trillions of naira, but they are remitting zero to CBN. How can you, and then they tell you it's because they're spending money on fuel subsidy. Meanwhile, it's few companies that are gaining the most from this fuel subsidy, and most of the fuel is even stolen. It's other African countries is smuggled across our borders. We don't even have accurate data on how much fuel is being imported in Nigeria. So you can see that, lack of, adequate policy implementation, it leads to untold hardship. And this is a policy that they've not been able to review it and adapt it for a long time. Whenever I talk to politicians about this, even at the highest level, they'll tell you, oh, it's an election year. We can't remove subsidy. We can't touch it. We can't touch it. Every government that comes in says the same thing. So who is going to be courageous enough to remove this subsidy? And then we're not saying, yes, we know that it's going to affect the poor masses. But then how do you ensure that the people...
Maybe I can cut into that, because you've touched a very, very sensitive subject matter. And this is the issue of subsidy. And I'm going to tell Buhari that you're the one who spoke about it, not me. What do we do? What do we do about this subsidy? What do we do about our multi-level foreign exchange rates? What do we do? And what is the impact? And if you were president of Nigeria, what would you really have done? And how do you think it would have helped our economy on this issue of subsidy?
So thank you for that question. And my answer to the question is basically what I've been speaking about. The thing about, as a politician, you cannot predict the future. You're not a soothsayer, you're not a magician, right? You cannot say that if I implement this policy like this is exactly how it's going to turn out. So what you need to do in your policy making process is this PDIA thing I just talked about. You learn, you adapt, you test, you innovate. You don't just stick to one thing. So for instance, now, this fuel subsidy of an issue, why don't we come up with something? You can create a think tank. There are brilliant Nigerians all across the world. There are people who can actually create tech solutions that can help to determine the actual amount. I know someone personally who said that he would develop the app for Nigeria for free that will be able to gauge exactly how much fuel is being imported, because most times it's guesstimates. People who apply for subsidy, sometimes they don't even import any fuel and they're paid this subsidy. So the whole system needs an overhaul. It needs an overhaul. We're not saying don't subsidize the poor. Why don't we even have something whereby we subsidize at the pump? For instance, we can choose to subsidize the buses. If you're worried that, okay, transportation costs will go up, food costs will go up, there are innovative ways of doing it. You can choose to phase it out. You can choose to, but the point is, don't just fold your arms and say you're not going to do anything about the subsidy situation for decades, because it leads to a situation where we now have this pressure, our fiscal pressures now. We don't have money. NNPCs were meeting, zero and all that stuff. And then now we're even defaulting on our loans and things like that. So the point of what I'm trying to say is we have to keep iterating, we have to keep innovating. Policy making cannot be draconian, it cannot be nobody knows it all. And a lot of people in government don't want to tell you, but a lot of them don't know. They don't have the answers. But because they're a big man, they're in government, they don't want to go and talk to the end users. And so, for instance, Africa Policy Conversations, we've had sessions where we brought policymakers, and then we bring the people that they're making the policy for. Because you're making a policy for tech. Are you a software engineer? You're not using those policies that you're making. You just sit down you can sit down in a, what's it called, Federal Secretariat or somewhere, National Assembly or wherever. You're making these policies, but you're not the one using it at the end of the day. So we must always have that system where you're testing it with the end users, you're getting the feedback directly, and whatever you're doing, your policy is data-driven and is evidence-based. That was what I spoke about in the beginning. That's the ideal way for you to have successful policies. When you start testing it, you see something is working, you consolidate on it. But you can't be doing something and it's not working and you just continue to do it. That's the challenge that we're having, as a nation. So I hope I've been able to answer that particular question. And we can move to the next slide so that I can start wrapping up. So solutions and recommendations, like I mentioned, there's a lot that can be done. Like I said, we need user-centric policies. So policies that are made with the user in mind and with data gotten from the end users. We need collaboration among stakeholders. You have a lot of people working in silos in Nigeria. One agency is doing their own thing. Sometimes they're doing something completely opposite from what another agency is doing. For instance, renewable energy. Renewable energy is supposed to be you're supposed to be tax exempt. So you can get pioneer status and all that stuff. But in practice, I've seen both the companies that I advise and do business with try to import things for renewable energy, solar panels and all that stuff. And they'll tell you to pay all those duties. Meanwhile, you're not supposed to pay any taxes or duties on it. But when you're at that customs or this thing, so one agency is bringing out a policy or an incentive, another one is stifling it in the same government. It happens all the time. So we need that to stop. We need more collaboration and more synergy. And like I said, we need more innovation. We need to understand what the pain points are, and we need to always try to build that consensus. There's something here that I call squeezing the lemon. We already have a lot of we have a lot of institutions in this country that have so much in them, but it hasn't been squeezed out. Not everything needs to be overhauled. Some things still have potential in them, but you just need to be able to bring out that potential. So we must ensure that we're doing that. And we need to find authorizers with an H. Basically, this means that we need to find people in government who care enough about the problem and want to solve it. Because some people just don't care. Some people are just there maybe to enrich themselves. But then there are people in this Nigeria that care about the problem and want to make a headway. Please go to the next slide. I don't know if that's the last one. Please, can you go to the next slide?
Okay. Yeah, this is the last one.
So yes. So basically my call to action, and I know that there are different people on this call joining from various parts of the country or parts of the world. We can make a difference. I talk to a lot of young people, I mentor a lot of young people. There's a lot of hopelessness. People sometimes have lost, feel like there's no hope in Nigeria. They've lost faith and everything. But there is hope. There's so much that can be achieved, and you don't need everybody. People keep thinking that, you need to get everybody on board. No, you need everybody. You just need a critical mass. And I always say, we are all leaders. You don't have to be a political leader. We are all leaders in our own spheres of influence, meaning that where you are, you can make a difference. For instance, I was doing my private law practice before I decided to start doing consulting, before I decided to, set up the platform with other like-minded people, the Africa Policy Conversations, where we're supporting various government agencies, and we've been able to move the needle. For instance, now, Nigeria now has an IP policy. Even though it took many years of advocacy pushing under different umbrellas, as NESG, I'm the thematic lead for intellectual property and innovation. Different platforms, MBA, Nigerian Bar Association. Africa policy. We've been pushing it, but this year now we have an IP policy. Finally, we're yet to see how it's going to be implemented. The point is, you can make a difference. The role of the diaspora, I think a lot of people on this platform are in the diaspora. We always say diasporas, they remit so much money, much more than oil revenue, for instance. The head of the Africa Development Bank stated a few days ago that the diaspora remittances coming into Africa is way more than all these development funds put together, all these development funds, all these donor agencies. So it means that we can actually solve our own problems. We can have homegrown solutions, because I don't really like this complex, or I don't know how to explain it. People always feel like it's a white man that has to come and rescue us or something. We as Africans, we as Nigerians can actually create solutions, but we need to think ahead. We need to plan, we need to strategize, and we need to collaborate. So as you're sending money to somebody in your village from the diaspora, make sure that you're telling the person, you're giving them that voter education, you're telling them, please go out and vote for this right candidate. Make sure that your money is working for you. So basically, the point I'm trying to make is that everybody can play a role. Some people need to go out there and run for office. Some people need to go there and be the policy makers, because sometimes it helps when you have competent people that understand this thing. It's not just to be doing advocacy, NESG, all this. You keep talking, but guess what? They say politics trumps economy or policies. Politics trumps policies. You need to be a politician at the end of the day to have the power to implement all these things that we're talking about. So I think more people, more good people on this platform, like-minded people, need to get involved, run for office, support a candidate you believe in. Let's all work together to salvage this country. We have everything it takes to be one of the greatest countries in the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chinenye. Unfortunately, I'm so sorry. I think there might be network issues in the office, but we'll have Pastor rejoin shortly. And while we have you, just wanted to appreciate you for doing this. Thank you so much for responding to the call to duty. It's good to see you. One question that I have, you called is a call to action. And a few things that you mentioned that really that resonates with me is this feeling of hopelessness. But we are not hopeless as citizens, as the electorate. But what are some of the practical steps that we can take to be engaged in first, even before policy implementation, but even developing those policies? How do we get the leadership or those in power that will develop those policies? How do we as the citizens propose policies that impact us? You talked about the end users, but as citizens, we are end users in healthcare, in education. So if you can just speak a little bit about some of those strategies as part of the call to action, especially with the new government coming in. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Like I said, as part of the presentation, some people think it's only a government that can make policies. Not only government, the citizen. So, for instance, when we had the NSAS, that NSAS protest shook Nigeria, and the government paid attention, maybe for once to the young people, and remember that there were specific things that they were asking for. Reforming the police, changing, the wages, police brutality, all those. I think it was a 4 points or 8 points. I can't really remember now. That is policy making, because some of those things I think they said they disbanded SARS, and some of those things were, but obviously I don't know the status of SARS now, but I know that I remember then that there was an executive order or something disbanding SARS, and certain government took some certain action, right? Obviously, end SARS down, a lot happened, violence, all that, and I don't really like to speak about it because it was a very, yeah. So basically, the point I'm trying to make is, as citizens, the power actually lies in our hands. But the problem is that we don't feel empowered. The masses in Nigeria do not think that they have the power to make a difference. Most people you speak to, they say, oh, government, they've already decided everything. If you tell them vote, even if I vote, they already know who is going to win. things like that. So people need to be informed. Now, please, everybody on this call, pay attention to me. When I talk about a critical mass, it's actually you and I. The poor Nigerians, the 130 million people who are in abject poverty, honestly, they're not the ones that are going to save us, because poverty is crippling. Poverty, I mean, you have to even eat first before you go and talk about advocacy and, So most times, even the knowledge to know the difference, a lot of people see these elected officials as gods, as demigods. They don't see them as servants. They're public servants, but they don't see them as servants. So they don't even see them as people that, I can call you to order. I can remove you if you don't do the right thing. Do you know that we've done this analysis, testing, average citizens. Do you know that you can recall your senator? Do you know that you can recall your House of Assembly? A lot of them don't know. When they just come, they see them, they bow down, they prostrate, they ask for money, So the mindset shift has to happen. And what people like us need to do is not only talk to ourselves, because sometimes it can be a bit incestuous. We're all just speaking to ourselves. We need to take this message to the 130 million people. Those are people, we need to sensitize them so that they can know better, to demand better, to hold their leaders accountable. That's one thing. And the second thing I told you is a lot of us have to also get involved in politics. I think I've made that point, So advocacy, like I said, we're already doing that. I'm sure Africa Leadership Group is doing that. We're doing advocacy, but like I said, advocacy only gets to a certain level. You're going to write papers, you do webinars, you do conferences, but it's still those decision makers, the politicians at the end of the day. We need to punish them with our votes. So if they don't do well, we make sure that they lose the election, they don't get re-elected. Because we have a case in Nigeria, sometimes people just say, let him just finish his term. And he has done one term, let him just do his second term, things like that. So we really need a mindset shift, right? And then we need to ensure that we're getting involved in the civic participation. We're making sure that we're getting our PVCs. You know that this election will be the first election I'm going to be voting in. Some people I know in my household that are in their 50s, 60s, some of them are voting for the first time in this election. So we've actually been part of the problem. I'm not going to lie. We've stayed on the sidelines for too long. We don't ask questions. We don't, you should be able to punish. If someone doesn't do well, vote them out, So I don't know if I've been able to answer, but I can make a lot of recommendations, right? But trust me, the most powerful recommendation is to have the right person in office, a person who is listening, a person who is competent, and a person who is willing to take in all these new methods and new innovations in the area of policy making and area of policy implementation. Thank you.
And we are the ones that can put that right person in office. So, you talk a lot about policy being an iterative process, but do we have oversight groups that review these policies from time to time to see it? Then how do we evaluate these policies to see its effectiveness or how it's performing? And so, I mean, maybe that's one of the things that we need to do, right? Have oversight committee. I don't want to call them committees, but oversight groups that can evaluate these policies. Are there benchmarking processes for some of these policies? You identify, the problem you are trying to solve, but what is the benchmark? What are some of the key performance indexes for these policies that would help us? Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
That's a brilliant question. So I was recently having a conversation with some stakeholders. I think, World Bank, some other people. There was a program that I was trying to implement. I forget the name of the organization, which is trying to do what you just mentioned. It's just a new idea, innovation. I don't know how it's going to be implemented. But prior to now, our ministers, who are like our chief policymakers, don't have KPIs. So there's actually no system in place most times. So that's why you see somebody can just be underperforming and they'll still be in office. So this program that they're trying to work on is supposed to now review, give ministers KPIs. So, we know who are the ones that are doing well, performing well, who are the, Countries like Rwanda, for instance, I know I have a friend, a senior friend who's from Rwanda. She's close to the president, and she was like, they have, as a country, they have this, I think, annual meeting where all the key people, stakeholders in the country come and sit down, and the ministers present to them their projects. This is what I've done. This is how much I spent on the budget. And you know, as you're presenting, the minister of budget is there. The minister of finance is there. So you can't even lie. You know, and I saw that, okay, what happens when somebody tries to lie? She said there was a time that a minister said that he had completed a project. He said that to Paul Kagame, this thing. He didn't know that the president said the next day the president got on a helicopter and flew to that place that he claimed that he had completed this project. And when they got there and they saw that the project was not completed, the minister was fired on the spot. This is a fellow African country like us. I know that they are small, but the point I'm trying to make is, you're absolutely right. We don't have oversight functions. Honestly, with some of the work I've been doing, consulting with these government agencies, you know, I sometimes I'm weak. Do you know, if you see the people that are making policies for Nigeria, and if you see the process there, you will weep for Nigeria. A lot of times there's no thoughts, they don't even care. When you go to their office, they are telling you, oh, please find a job for me now, find something for me now. I want to travel abroad, or whatever it is. They're looking for things. They want you to do workshop for them to go abroad, go somewhere so they can get ESTA code. They're not doing their work. Honestly, like I weep when I have this experience. I actually weep for Nigeria. Do you know you can take anything to them like this and they'll implement it? A lot of times it's consultants. They rely on consultants. And the funny thing is, even the quality of the consultants most times is not even good, because they use consultants that will give them kickbacks. So for instance, when I was doing this project with GIZ, they didn't like me in the beginning. Some of them didn't like me because they felt like GIZ is paying me so much money. They want to be the ones benefiting from that money. They want a consultant that they can bring, tell the consultant, okay, quote this amount, so that they can take 70% or take whatever it is. So because of that in the beginning, they weren't even trying to work with me, even with all the supports that were given. GIZ has a fund domiciled in the ministry, all that stuff. So you see them fighting a system that's actually supposed to help them do their work that they're not doing. So they actually, so they don't have KPIs, so they can stay on something for 10 years. There's a policy that we were working on, we helped them develop, that this policy has been pending for years and years. In fact, the directors in charge, some of them are about to hit their retirement, but they don't care. They don't mind if it doesn't happen, as long as if they're not gaining money from it, they're not chopping directly. Let that thing not happen, let that thing not work. So this is the mindset that we're dealing with. So it will shock you that if I was that kind of person, I'll say, okay, you know what? Okay, I don't care now, no problem. I'll just do a shoddy job and just leave it. You know, so this is the challenge. We don't have oversights. Sometimes you even find that some ministers don't even care. They're just politicians. Some of them didn't even know, okay, sorry to say, in this administration, you have someone who is a medical doctor. They'll put the person in maybe aviation. Somebody who is supposed to be in education, they'll put the person. So you're overseeing an agency that you've had no experience in. Just because you belong to a political party, you're the friend to the president or you're the friend to somebody. So it's really unfortunate. So you see them, they don't even care. Some of them, they're like, okay, why do I need to make this policy? Okay, they don't really care. They don't see the long-term effects or benefits. So there are so many issues and there's so many challenges, but you know, like I keep saying, there's hope, and you know, we can all be part of making that difference.
So I have maybe one or two more questions before we open it up. You know, when we look at policy implementation, we're looking at it that is so far away. It's the godfathers in Abuja that are making these policies and then sending it down but bring it down to the local levels, the local government, where we feel that maybe we have more of an influence because it's closer to us. So speak a little bit about those policies and how we in our local government areas can begin to influence some of these policies or demand results from some of these policies.
So this is another very, very good question. Now, let me talk about the local government. You know, there's been this issue of revenue allocation, resource control, and all these things. Governors taking the money belonging to local government chairman and not giving it to them and all that stuff. So a lot of the blame actually goes to the governors. A lot of the governors do not want checks and balances. They want to be the end all be all in their states. So you have a system where the judiciary relies on the executive, the governor, for their resources. The legislative arm of government relies on government or the governors. I've been in sessions. We've had capacity building sessions for speakers of state houses of assembly, the conference of speakers in Nigeria. A lot of them, first of all, were even saying that for them to come for the training, they have to take permission from their governors. So, because the government has to be the one to give them money for their flights, money for their hotel, things like that. Now, the legislative arm of government, the legislative arm, that's the legislators, are the ones who are supposed to be making, they are one of the key stakeholders in policy making on the state level. They make the laws, right? Because we have the concurrent list and all that. So now you find a situation whereby some of them say they don't even have money for AIDS, they don't even have, all sorts of things that we speak about. So on the state level, if I was talking to someone, a young person, because that's where you have even younger people vying for office and everything, and he was complaining about something, and I said, you're running for office now to join the state House of Assembly. Do you know that you can propose a bill on this particular problem that you're talking about? You can actually be the one that makes that difference. So I realized a lot of the people on that state level don't have a lot of them they don't have the capacity, because remember that a lot of these politicians, governors, they put in a lot of their boys in the House of Assembly because they don't want a House of Assembly that will impeach them. So they make sure that the speaker is in their pockets. They make sure that there's no checks and balances. So most times they don't even propose bills on their own. They just rely on the governor and things like that. Meanwhile, that's a place that you can actually have a lot of impact because they're the closest to the people. So part of what AFPC is trying to do now, and we've designed a program where we're going to work with the subnationals, the states. In fact, we've gotten commitment. I think the speaker of Edo State House of Assembly, I even invited him to join the call. I hope he's able to make it. And basically what we want to do is work with these people and help them with our think tank to know what the kind of policies and the kind of laws and the kind of legislation that they need to put in place to help their states to grow. So when we're doing this training, do you know we're telling them about things like right of way? Some of them didn't know. Like the fact that we're not able to bring in telecoms infrastructure in your states is because the right of way charges, the telecoms companies and the fiber optics and all this, they need you to waive those right of way charges, because if they keep paying all those right of way charges in all the states, all the local governments, the project will no longer it will become too expensive. It will no longer be viable for them or bankable for them. So even just a policy like that to remove right of way charges can actually attract a lot of investment for you in that area of infrastructure. A lot of them were just looking. They were like amazed. They've never heard that before. So it just makes you wonder, one, the capacity of people there on that level. Two, some of them don't even know what they're there to do. I was moderating a session with speakers, legislators from different parts of the country, young legislators. Do you know that some of them were telling me that when they got in there, they were building police stations. One told me he was doing this, paying school fees, doing so many things. They don't know that their primary role is lawmaking. So the citizens are telling them, oh, you're the government we can see, forgetting that most of these projects are actually, that's the executive. So most of this construction of hospital, whatever, is another arm of government that's supposed to be handling this. So we have an issue of we need to try and raise the awareness and the capacity of the people, the lawmakers, to know that lawmaking is noble, it's useful, it's actually a catalyst. Laws and policy, can lead to growth and development. I'll give you an example of a beautiful policy in Nigeria that has worked. It's the local content policy for the oil and gas sector. And other sectors have implemented it. There was a time in the oil and gas sector in Nigeria that And I think it was Desiani. Sorry, I think Desiani gets a lot of bad rep, but I think she must have been the one that passed that policy, or maybe the minister before her. I'm not sure, but it might have been her. But prior to then, even all the oil and gas companies will bring in foreigners, expatriates, to do little things. Something as little as welding, a shell or a mobile or whatever, will bring in an expatriate. Meanwhile, there are Nigerians that can do the job. You know, little things, services, all these things, they were monopolizing the whole thing and bringing in expatriates. And there was a lot of capital flights. But with one policy, the local content policy, and they set up the Nigerian Local Content Board, who Simbi Wabote is the head of that agency right now. And they said, all these jobs that Nigerians can do, you need to ensure that Nigerians, so you have to give like a right of first refusal to a Nigerian company. If you cannot now find a Nigerian company that can do the job, then you can now export and bring other people, foreigners and all that. And a lot of people became billionaires. I know people, even young people who went into the sector, started doing oil and gas servicing. They bought one vessel, before you know it, 2 vessels. They started doing contracts with the IOCs for thousands of dollars. They started creating jobs. They started doing all that. One policy created billionaires. Even the banks too, the banking sector too, there's also been, the consolidation of banks, that policy too. So people need to understand that lawmaking, policy making can lead to, it can catalyze growth and development. So we need to ensure that they are sensitized. On the state level, there's so much. You don't have to wait for Abuja. You don't have to wait for the federal government. There's so much that can be done on the state level, because that's the government that is the closest to the people. So I hope I've been able to answer that question and shed more light on it. Yeah.
Thank you. And before I stop, and then we'll open the floor up for more questions. Do we have like a list of the policies that we as citizens can begin to review in terms of the areas, all the different policies that are in effect? And maybe that's where some of the groups, some of the advocacy groups can come together and form a ad hoc oversight committee to review these policies and its effectiveness. Because then, you mentioned that this is a new government and it's really the make or break, because we are at the brink of something and something's got to give, and all hands on deck. So maybe we can start with looking at those policies, because that's the make or break of everything. Look at the policies that are in effect and their effectiveness, and then propose. So at least they are aware, maybe even helping the cronies that don't really know much about what they're doing. It could also, providing that support and assistance to them in terms of intellectual capacity. So if you have that list, I'll reach out to you offline. Maybe that's something that's another initiative we can work on jointly, ALG and your outfit, and look at the list of policies and what needs to be changed and how we propose those changes. Thank you. So I have a couple of hands up.
Should I answer the question or?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. Before we take the question from the audience. Okay.
Yes.
So you said, is there a list of policies? I don't even think government has that list that you're asking about. Because
that's
a lot
scary,
of times, you see an agency, you'll be telling them that, oh, in so year, there was this policy. They will not be asked, oh, really? Because, a lot of our things are not digitized. It's not automated. So someone can come and do one thing, another government will come and do another thing. So we don't have a comprehensive database as of now of all the policies of different government agencies. Now, with, I remember during Yewande Sediku's time, I know they tried to do because that was the Nigerian Investment Promotion Commission. For her own agency, she tried to have like this, a document that had like different initiatives and policies that they had done. So that was something that she did that was quite good. So you could just go into their agency, because a lot of them, it's so hard to even find, some of the stuff. Now, some of them who are a little bit more progressive, you can see their websites, they issue things on their website. But to have something comprehensive, because remember, you can have, so let's say, for instance, e-commerce policy now. E-commerce, one agency can, like postal service now, taxation, CBN, there's so many, trade and investment, NIDA. All these agencies are part of one policy, meaning that they have pockets of different things that affect, because there's not one document. you have to go to this agency to find out about this particular one and go to another agency. So we don't have like a harmonized database. And that's actually one of the things that AFPC has been working on for some time. But remember, we're a non-profit, so it's not like we can do all these things by ourselves. And these are the kind of areas like you mentioned, and I'm glad you brought it up, that these are things that we could collaborate on to, you know, digitize these things so that you even know, you understand what do we have in place, where are the gaps, and what can we do to improve the situation. So yeah, thank you for that question.
Thank you so much. Pastor Ituah is back online.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chinenye. What do you think is in the horizon for Nigeria in terms of governance come 2023, and which way do you think the elections are going to go?
Wow, you're putting me on the spot. What do I think is on the horizon? So the thing is, in my heart, I'm hopeful for change. In my, you know, I'm optimistic. But at the same time, is cautious optimism, because I don't know if we're ready. I mean, some of us are, the ones on this call, maybe people on social media, but that 130 million people who are in abject poverty or multidimensional poverty, like they call it, I don't know if they're ready. And somebody who is dying of hunger, if you give them 5,000, they will sell their votes. They will sell their votes for Indomie. They will sell their votes for whatever it is, because you can't, these things we're saying is English to them. They just want to survive. They just want to eat. They're just thinking about the day. So I'm optimistic about change, but I don't know if we're going to get that kind of drastic change that we desire. How do I think the elections will go? I think that there would be, I don't think that I don't know if we'll have a clear winner. I don't know. So there are a lot of factors now. There's the beavers. So there's the electronic transmission of votes now. And I'm really looking forward to seeing that being properly implemented. That's a great initiative policy, you know, that the civil society and all that we've been fighting for years, advocating to make sure that we stop this handwritten, because being a lawyer, I've been in election petitions. Most times the challenge is these election results. By the time you write it, somebody can just use biro, go into another room. After counting, when they come out, they announce a different result. So with these beavers, to some extent, it will be harder to read. So it means that votes will hopefully count more, but I just don't know, because look, the vote buying now, it has become very technical. Like they have taken it to another level. I heard that they're using BVN now. So they can wire the money to you directly through your BVN. So vote buying is happening. So I don't know how, that's why I don't know if we're ready, if we're there yet, but I'm optimistic. I pray, you know, that we get there.
All right, I won't push you further because you've answered the question very carefully and skillfully. That's fine. We have a few people who want to ask questions. I don't know if Pastor Sonny is there and he wants to make any comments or ask any questions very quickly. Sonny Enebi. Is Sonny there?
I think, yes, he is. I'm going to ask him to unmute now.
Maybe he's sleeping. Sonny, do you have any questions? Any comments? All right. Now, Chinenye, is it possible, and I don't know if Jumoke has asked this question already, please excuse me. Do you have, is it possible that you can bring out, for example, all the policies in Nigeria that are not quite working for us, policies that need to be changed, policies that need to be tinkered, policies that need to be amended, and so on and so forth, to drive good governance and to drive economic growth, and maybe to also drive security and help with infrastructure. If you can think of doing that, that would be wonderful. It could be a document that we can work with and discuss even on this platform, and so on and so forth. And even on top of that, what other policies would people like yourselves and your demography like to see that will help Nigeria going into the future? Because the future does belong to you. I know, for example, that the Bitcoin people are not happy. They want some policies changed and implemented here and there. I don't know if you can think of that. And then we're going to take a few questions and we begin to close. Is that something you can think of?
Yeah, so you asked, I was smiling because that's what she asked that question, and she was saying that, is there any way that we have like a comprehensive, document of all the policies and, and I was saying that even government doesn't have that comprehensive list. And what we're trying to do, we're trying to build a data bank, like a policy. It's an initiative we started a while ago, but it's a non-profit, like I said, it's self-funded. A lot of this information, you don't even have it digitized. So it's like you have to go to various agencies, you have to, and it's not something coordinated. It's doable, but it's something that obviously is demanding. It requires a lot of resources. And these are some of the initiatives that we're hoping to collaborate with like-minded organizations to be able to, create that, as an organization, we have reviewed some policies. We've made certain recommendations as an organization, and we continue to do so. We have a think tank where we have volunteers, but it's not easy when you're working with volunteers. You're not paying them, so sometimes you have to be the productivity level is not as much. But we did a new call for volunteers, and we had a lot of people actually show interest. About like 30-something people have signed on. So next year, like I mentioned to her when you were not on the call, we're hoping to work more with the subnationals, with the states, to really go in there, gather all the data that we need, get all the, because a lot of them, like I said, they don't have it like digitized, or they don't have a comprehensive, platform or somewhere where you can just go and easily search for it. So that's something that we're hoping to work on. And even as the next government is coming in as well, we are trying to position ourselves and get the, like-minded people as well to be able to really do some design thinking, right? Evidence-based, and look at all the pain points. What have been the impediments to growth? What have been the challenges? It's not rocket science, Even this Nigerian Youth Futures Fund that I sit on the board of, they've been doing this exercise called the Nigeria We Want, going around to ask young people about the Nigeria that they want. And once we're done with that exercise, I'm going to share that document with you. But that one is more of like wants and aspirations. But in terms of on the policy side, I don't know any other person who is doing any, we're trying to work on that, and we'll be very happy to work with, your organization and other like-minded organizations to produce that, so that we can support the next administration, see that the change that we so desperately require and deserve.
All right, thank you very much. We'll take a few questions. There's Noyo on the raising their hands. NDP staff, I don't know who that is. The person will introduce himself when he's ready to speak. And then Stephen Ipilabo Lawson. We take those three questions and then we begin to close. Please go straight to the question that you have to ask or the comment that you want to make. Make it very brief. We want to 30 seconds, maximum 60, and then let's take it from there. Thank you, Madam Noyo.
Thank you so much. My name is Evangelist Mrs. Noyo Antonia Eden. First and foremost, I want to really thank you, the presenter today. I want to thank you. It's very insightful. I've learned a lot. You taught us. I got some words from you that I will use. Thank you so much. You know a lot, so you're teaching us, and you came prepared. So I just give you, thank you. So what I want to ask, I know. What I want to ask, I don't know, with our lawmakers, they are coming from various backgrounds, as we are all aware. Some of them are not really very enlightened or educated. Some of them, they have just secondary education, and who knows. So when they come together after they've been elected, do they have any kind of formal orientation before they start, in policy matters? Do they go through any kind of formal teaching orientation? Because any job anywhere, like where we are in the United States, any job you have, whether you are coming with any kind of education, you have to go through some kind of formal orientation so that you know what you are expected to do in your office. Do they have that in place in Nigeria for our lawmakers?
I think we're going to take all three questions, if that's okay with you.
Okay.
Right, Pastor, is that what we're doing?
I think so.
Okay. So let me, Steve is unmuted.
NDP staff, unmute yourself. Please.
Okay. Thank you so much for this interesting program. You know, you really did excellent job. I appreciate that. My name is Chinenye Uwanaka, the former chairman of Nigerian diaspora here from Chicago. So I know that MacArthur Foundation is spending millions in Abuja to so many civil societies to really improve this thing or expose all these problems. You know, I don't know why are there no changes, you know, or at least bring them out, you know, to see this and that. And how do you fund your $5 million youth program? You say because you are running a youth program of $5 million. Can you talk about that too, please?
All right, thank you very much, Stephen.
All right, thank you, Pastor Ituah. The name is actually Stephen Ipali Ball-Loston, Pastor. But it's all right. Chinenye, thank you very much. And I think this has been a very insightful presentation. And I thank everybody who has made that contribution. Briefly, a subsidy economy is one that thrives even in developed nations. Unfortunately, we don't seem to apply it properly here because of different shades of interest that obviously comes to play. However, if we are going to build a critical mass, just like you've mentioned, it has to be beyond 2023. There is no doubt in saying the fact that 130 million Nigerians are actually not ready because first and foremost, the stomach infrastructure needs to be addressed before any other thing else. It's the same Maslow law of hierarchy, and we've not dealt with that. And I think it's because we do not have an ideological foundation as a society upon which we can lay the pedestal of a society that is thriving. We need to address that. And that is a sociological aspect that a lot of times we do not consider when we enact policies. All right. And so I wonder, you are running a project that is dealing with about 5 million youth, so to speak. And I know that is a critical mass. 5 million people who are subscribed to a code.
Sorry,
but
we're not dealing with 5 million youths.
Okay.
It's the fund is a $5 million fund.
Okay, pardon me. Now, the point is this. If we're able to build a critical mass of 1 to 5 million Nigerians who are signed to what they will consider an ideal of what the Nigerian of the future can be, will that not make a change beyond 2023? Number one. Number two, we keep talking about government, and sometimes I get the impression that government seems to be an alien entity that is not responsible to certain things. When you talk about limited liability companies, a limited liability companies obviously has its advantages and disadvantages. It can stand alone, it can bear its own assets, it can bear its own debt. Why do we always create the impression that government happens to be something you can't hold on to? People make up the government, for God's sake. It's like you're talking about the presidency. You cannot take away the president, the chief of staff, and the rest of that from that presidency. And so my question is this. Is the government we seem to address an entity we cannot hold responsible, or what exactly do we define the government, so to speak, to mean? Thank you very much.
You can respond to that, Chinenye.
Okay, I'm just popping my email as well in the chat box because I think some people requested. So, okay. Okay. Where do I start from? Okay. So the first question, and thank you everyone for the kind words and comments. I really enjoyed doing this. I mean, I was just told about this last night. So, but because it's an area that I'm quite passionate about, so it was just easy for me to just, put slides together really quickly. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to be able to share my little knowledge. And yeah, so the question on the training for lawmakers, great question. And like I said earlier, this is one of the areas. So this capacity building for emerging leaders is an area that we've been trying to work on. Now, there's an organization called PLAC, and I know that they do that for the National Assembly. So in NESG, we've had multiple meetings and stuff, trying to partner with PLAC. So PLAC, they are the ones who do the training. I think is it in February? No, not in February. Sometime next year, though, they're gonna have this session where they bring in the new legislators, because about 50% of the legislators that are coming in are new. Lots of people lost their seats. So we're going to have new lawmakers. They've never been lawmakers in the past. And lots of times they kind of have to learn on the job. Now, this is just on the National Assembly level. Now, for the states, I'm not aware of any other organization that is doing that. Like I told you, with NESG, I've facilitated some capacity building sessions for the judiciary, for judges and the state houses of assembly, but a lot of them were even begging. They were like, oh, if you guys can come and do this in our states, we'll be very happy, because we only had, I think, 1 or 2 for the state houses. And this is an area, like I said, African Policy is working on, for the subnationals, right? To be able to support them with our think tank, to be able to come up with data-driven policy and laws as well. So training is very, very, very important. Like you said, some of them are not educated. Lots of politicians, some of them didn't go to school. I mean, come to think of it, in the past election cycle, there was a debate about WAEC certificates and all that. And so whoever was saying, if they bring NEPA bill, we'll still vote. And this is at the highest level. Now, even this election cycle, there's all these hullabaloo about certificates and all that stuff. So imagine at that level, at the state level. So you have a lot of people there who, some can't speak English very well. And I'm not saying that speaking English is the proof that you're a competent leader, but if you're going into something, you need to equip yourself with the skill set that you need to be able to do a good job at it. And I really worry about the caliber of people that we have. If I speak about my state, there are people who I know, they have criminal, history, or people like that, questionable character. You find a lot of them, they just make money in a shady way, maybe drugs or 419. They go into politics. That's the quickest way to clean up themselves, clean up their image. So we really need to have better people go into those positions, because those are people that will appreciate what you and I are talking about here. So we need to do more to ensure that the right people get into those positions so that they can do the right thing. I always say it's about service, not about self-aggrandizement or enriching yourself. We need to change the mindset. Politicians are seeing themselves as going in there to make back money, recover money, but no, it's about service. So we need to work on both the technical training and the reorientation and the training of their mindsets as well. Now, the second question about MacArthur Foundation and all that. Yeah, these foundations, they are doing amazing things. I just got appointed on this board for the Nigerian Youth Futures Fund. And like I said, it's a $5 million fund that's seeded for a period of 5 years. Meaning that, so now the thing is, I'm doing this, I'm a board of trustee. So I'm not even doing it, I'm not, because people hear that, oh, you're giving out grants, they think you're the one that is benefiting or stuff like that. So for me, it's service, right? I don't have any interest. We just select organizations based on merit and based on people who are actually doing stuff. This is our first year, and I must commend them for trying to do something for the youth, and trying to do something for, just to encourage people and, to do all that. So we just gave out $600,000, because every year we'll be giving out around that, because obviously there's running costs and costs for doing other things. So what we do is we have oversight functions, we ensure that everything is done accordingly. Obviously there's an active secretariat staff and people who do the day-to-day. So we just do the advisory, decision-making, selecting the people and all that. So we don't interfere. I don't even know, most of the people that get the grants, I don't even know them from anywhere. So that's just to answer the question about what the 5 million is used for. It's a grant, so they don't have to pay back. So we've given, I think some organizations get about $40,000. Some get $6,000. Individuals get about 1,000 or 3,000. So it's just different categories. And what we really try to do, and I was very adamant about this, is to encourage inclusion of women, inclusion of persons with disabilities, inclusion of people who are from rural places, because the problem we've had in the development space is that they always give, it's like a clique. This USAID, World Bank, this one, sorry to, I'm mentioning it, I hope nobody from there is on this call, but you have a clique, especially in Abuja, where the donors, they have their friends that are consultants, and they just select and pick which organizations get this money, people who speak their language. But then somebody can be in a rural community, they might be an illiterate, but they're doing impactful work there. But because they can't put a proposal together, they can't speak the English, then they will not be able to access the funding. They can't write the grants, So what we try to do is make this fund as inclusive as possible to target people in different areas, remote areas. And we had the unveiling, was it just last week or 2 weeks ago? We had the unveiling of the people, and they are so motivated, and we're hoping to do much more with that fund by the grace of God. Then the next, I think, final question was on subsidy. Oh, no. I think it was more of a comment about building a critical mass, and then you talked about 5 million. You thought it was 5 million people, but I said it was 5 million in terms of the fund. But I don't even remember what the question was, but I know that I think you're trying to talk about how do we solve. Can someone remind me of what the third question was? It was more of a comment, right, than a question.
I thought it was more of a comment.
Yeah, it was more of a comment. But yes, I do agree with you that we need to change the mindset of people, and it's not just about one election. I think you made that point, the salient point. We need to ensure that it's a continuous process. A lot of us wake up when it's close to election time. Meanwhile, it has to be a continuous effort of helping people to change their mindset, so that we can have that critical mass that can really make a difference in Nigeria. Thank you. So I'm done answering the question.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I think there is some kind of internet issues in Pastor's office today. So I think we may have lost his connection again, but thank you for answering all those questions. Do you have, okay, Pastor is back in. Do you have time for one more question? And then I'll hand it over to, well, Sonny is back on. Pastor Sonny is back, so we definitely have to take him. And Mr. Ongudemola also had a question. Please go ahead and ask your question. Let's keep it to 30 seconds because of time.
Thank you. You mentioned something regarding unicorn. Putting that in context, you're talking about fintech companies that are valued over $1 billion. The other thing I wanted to make mention of is the enemies of progress. When you talk about transparency, there are those in government that don't want transparency. So one has to keep that in mind with regards to trying to get these information from them. The third thing is when you talked about the ego policymakers, and I have one vivid example. It was a deputy governor, central bank. He was I spoke to him regarding M-Pesa, which is a successful money banking for the unbanked that was extremely successful, and they used the telecom industry for that. It was only after he left that position, and 10 years ago, that you now have MTN, and recently Airtel, that has got a license to be money banking institutions in the nation. It's regressive when you have folks like that in government who don't see the importance of how it benefits the people. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, you're absolutely right. You know, when I went to Kenya for the first time, I was like, when I, you know, in Persa, you know, even in Ghana, Momo, mobile money, like I went to markets, rural, this thing, and nobody was using cash. Everybody just tell you, you have M-Pesa, everything you want to do, pay for your lights, pay for your water, government agency, everything just with your phone. You just have one point. And I was like, wow, when they talk about ease of doing business, this is it, you know? So to think that, you know, maybe, and I don't want to obviously accuse anybody, but to think that you have people in government, it happens all the time, that sits on a particular policy. Now, you have to understand that there are people who are also lobbying them, possibly from another side. So I don't know, but what I heard was it was the banks, you know, that were trying to sit on it because they felt like they didn't want the telcos to come into their turf, you know. So that's the thing about there's actually a moral aspect of policy making, you know, because you need to now decide like what is good for, you know, the greater amount of people. You know, it's not just about protecting a clique or a select people, you know, and then we're talking about financial inclusion. That's the biggest step towards financial inclusion, you know, and you know, people maybe are saying, and then this is the thing that some people complain about. Some people who are billionaires, one policy is done for those people to keep them, and then the same thing is destroying other businesses. So there is a moral, you know, aspect of policy making where you need to ensure that you're doing it with the right motives for the greater good, you know. And that's why I always say you can't take away integrity. One of the things we really need to think about in this next election cycle is integrity. Like we need leaders with integrity and a value system. You can't give what you don't have. If fundamentally in your heart you don't care, you don't have love for your neighbor, you don't have, then you can't be a good, you know, leader. So that's a very good comment, or will I say comment and question. So yeah, I think
we have Pastor Sonny and Nabi, and then if you could make Pastor co-host again, because you're a host at the moment, if you could make him co-host so
Me?
that he can mute himself. Yes, we made you host.
Oh.
So if you can just make him co-host.
Okay.
Pastor Sonny, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Jumoke. And Chinenye, I want to really congratulate you for a brilliant presentation. Thank you very much for what you have told us so far. I know that time is fast spent, so I don't want to take too much time, but this is also my area. I'm an executive coach and I work with public sector people to implement their policies. And then we help them to look at what is the objective of this policy? What do you want to achieve? Who are those that will be impacted? All right. So we do all those analysis to try so that they can put all things in place. However, I don't know whether this has been raised, please pardon me if it has. The National Institute for Policy and Strategic Studies in Kuru is a policy formulation center for bureaucrats, private sector lenders, army officers, medium to top ranking civil servants. And I dare say that by the time you begin to get to level 15, 16 in the civil service, you are required to have attended NIPS.
Yeah.
And NIPS, by the way, is a fantastic institution. I had friends that were lecturers there. And so the issue is not whether they get the requisite training they need for policy formulation. I think, like you said, more of political will to do those things. So that is that about that. But the question really is, in the work you do, have you interfaced with NIPS? Do you know what kind of things they do there, how they impact the civil service, whether at states, federal, and all the other agencies of government with the kind of work they do, given that you're in the policy space?
No, that's a very good question. And you're not the first person to mention NIPS. So the people we work with, the policymakers we work with, most of them have attended, they've been there. I mean, before you can, like you said, before you can get to, in fact, most of them even go and do it in advance, preparing themselves to be appointed into positions. So I've definitely heard about them. I haven't attended. I did my training elsewhere, so I don't know what the curriculum. I don't know the content of the curriculum, and I don't know. Maybe we should look into like maybe writing to them or seeing if we can collaborate with them if they're open to it. That would be a good, because obviously that structure is already in place and it's a very renowned institution, and a lot of the civil servants go through that institution. Yeah. So, but this is usually for me, from my experience, is people who are in the civil service. But the lawmakers, the legislators I don't know if they're supposed to go there. The ones I know haven't been to. I think it's more of the policymakers as opposed to, I think her question, the lady who asked about training, she asked specifically about the lawmakers. So
yeah, and for the lawmakers, let me just say, every circle, they attend a mandatory training, whether it's at state level or at federal level. Once you are elected, there is an orientation for them that includes basic training about lawmaking and all the various gamuts. So for every session since 1999, it happens.
And like I mentioned, NESG, we've done, even as a thematic, we've done training. So I know that NESG does trainings. I know PLAC does training. Even there's another one, NILS, the National Institute for Legislative Studies. We also collaborate with them as well, and all that. So I know that these organizations exist, but I think we still need to ask ourselves, yes, they exist, and yes, these trainings are done, but obviously there's room for some more innovative thinking and, for more to be done, basically. But yes, definitely there are a lot of organizations doing a lot of training.
All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Pastor, over to you.
Well, just to say thank you very much, Chinenye, for coming. Thank you for your preparedness. Thank you for your knowledge and sharing your knowledge with us. And thank you for opening our eyes to policies and various areas of Nigeria. We wish you very well. Please be assured that there will definitely be areas where we can cooperate and work together, especially on that thing that Jumoke mentioned. And maybe we can then have an offline conversation at some stage about that. We would like your closing comments or your closing remarks. And maybe you can tell us when you are going to be president of Nigeria and what you're going to do when you become president. People always laugh when I say so, but I'm sure you do a very good job as president of Nigeria.
Maybe the first female one, if it's the will of God.
Why not?
No, to be honest, as a young girl, I had that dream. But then when I grew up, reality knocked out that this thing from my mind. But I mean, I'm a willing vessel and I'm available to use in any way that God wants me to use. I'm someone who I can't stand politics. People are always telling me, oh, run for office. And I'm like, you want to kill me? You want to use me as scapegoat? Because I feel like I don't want to compromise myself. I don't want to compromise my values, but I always am the one to encourage other people to please get involved. But I'm getting involved in the way that I can by doing all these, advocacy, engaging, sharing knowledge, and all that. But I always say to myself, if God, whatever God wills for me to do, I'm a willing vessel. So I will, comply with wherever life takes me. But first of all, I want to start by saying thank you, a big thank you to the African Leadership Group for finding me worthy, actually, to grace this platform. I mean, like I said, people who are part of the organization, like yourself, Pastor, so you guys are people that we watched on TV, and yeah, it's a dream come true. And I've actually come to a phase. Recently I was thinking about it just with Christmas coming and just being thankful that a lot of the things that we think about, as a man thinketh, so shall it be. So being here, and being able to do some of the work that I'm doing, even with the Nigerian Youth Features Fund, with Africa Policy Conversations. In fact, we have an event, our second event in the US is happening next week because there's an Africa Leaders Summit where President Biden has invited 49 African presidents and the head of the AU to come and discuss their strategy for Africa. And I think it's a brilliant opportunity because there's a scramble for Africa. So we are going to be on the sidelines, Africa Policy Conversation, having our conversation with our members in the diaspora, because we want to also have an answer. We don't believe in this neo-colonialist mindset that every time must be us running to the West all the time and not having our own position and our own strategy. Why should it be the US? So we're there to be able to gauge, find out what are the opportunities, what are the challenges, and how can Africa also, how can we position ourselves to also benefit? So the point I'm trying to make in a nutshell is that as a man thinketh, so shall it be. Each and every one of us on this call, if we believe that we can be part of the change, like anything you're thinking that should be in Nigeria right now, the reason why you have that pain in your heart is because maybe God has created you to be the solution, you know? So for me, I don't know, growing up, I've always been so concerned about what is happening in the country, you know, always been, you know, so even in the law practice, I found a way to still bring this into my law practice. So my call to action for each and every one of you is, you know, find out what that calling is in you. For you to be on this call, spending your 1 hour, 2 hours, is because you care, you know, and, you know, you should be able to take it to the next level, you know, to be able to really, you know, be the change you want to see, you know, because like I said, we're all leaders in our own spheres of influence. So you and I, all of us can make a difference. So once again, I'm so grateful. If you want to reach out to me, I'm on LinkedIn, Chinenye Uwanaka. I'm on Instagram, even though my Instagram is private, but LinkedIn, you can email me, Chinenye at the FEMA Advisory, or Africa Policy Conversations at gmail.com, or Africa Policy Conversations on LinkedIn. You know, we're constantly looking to collaborate with like-minded people because change is so hard and no one can do it alone. So on that note, I'll say thank you and have an amazing night, everyone.
Thank you very much. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of your evening and have a wonderful weekend and take good care. Greet them at Farmer for me and God bless you.
We hope to host you in person here.
Okay, we'll see how that goes. We'll try. Maybe my next time in Abuja, I'll let you know.
Thank you. And thank you, Ms. Jumoke and every other person at AGL. ALG, apologies. And thank you to everyone. Thank you for your amazing comments. I'm so thankful and grateful to each and everyone. God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you for your brilliant presentation. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Jumoke, for making the connection. God bless you. All right. Have a good evening. God bless you. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bambo, see you. God bless you. Falabi, thank you. Mrs. Abiona Ojo Odumo. Noyo, thank you very much. Ijoma, thank you. God bless you all. Have a wonderful weekend. Bless you. Alex, thank you so much. Juliet, thank you. Funlayo, thank you. Ademola, thank you. Stephen, always a pleasure. Prof de la Prof. God bless you all. Thank you very much. Lara, thank you. Great work. Great job. Sonny, God bless you. Okay, where? Kinde, thank you. Uchechi, thank you so much. Thank you. God bless you. Francis, blessing, and thank you so much. Shade, always thank you. Olu Victor, great job. Good night, everyone. God bless you all.